if it's in an area that is within a certain fire line score, it can be pretty challenging.
How often does an insurance agent want to see the report?
I think there's this idea, live in Montana, live in the woods, live in the forest, but from an insurance standpoint, it can pose a lot of challenges.
Hello and welcome everybody to episode 5 of the Inspection Reports. As always, I'm joined with your co-host, Tim Netzley. We're both professional inspectors with Inspect Montana. I'm Jed Deal, and today, happy to introduce Tom Clinch of Range Insurance Agency. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Appreciate you guys having me.
Yeah,
Looking
Tom.
forward to it.
Tom reached out to us via social media, which led to a Zoom call after I accidentally ghosted him the first time on trying to meet him in person.
Forgot about that. You should have reminded me.
Oh, an insurance guy accidentally.
I know. Yeah, not used to that at all.
Right.
Yeah.
But I did finally get in touch with him. We had a phone call and we just kind of connected over a mutual business ethos of helping people and trying to provide as much value as we can into the world. So, Tom, for those who don't know you or Range, would you just maybe take a moment and introduce yourself and what Range is all about?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So my name is Tom Clinch. I'm with Range Insurance Agency. I am an independent agency owner. And the reason I say that is I think the way that people view insurance is there's a lot of the big name brands. So I'm not an insurance company by any means. I'm an independent agent and I represent the portfolio of carriers that I resource to place insurance coverage for my clients. And I have experience being a what's called captive agent through State Farm. So I used to be a State Farm agent, had my own agency, staff and whatnot. And then I transitioned to the independent world and I just wanted to platform myself into an environment where we had choice and flexibility over time. I think I kind of saw where the industry was heading. There's been a lot of volatility in the last handful of years. And I really like to build relationships with people. And when you only have one product, it's pretty tough to build relationships over time, especially with the evolution of insurance. And so quick gist on, kind of what that encompasses. So I'm an independent agent. But born and raised in Montana, grew up in Helena. My family's from Helena. Been around there for a long time. My family homesteaded in Montana back in the mid 1800s. We still have an operating family ranch in Glen, Montana, which is right outside of Dillon, Lazy AU Ranch. Still operating to this day. So yeah, roots run deep in Montana. I have a huge passion for, I guess, that Montana side of things. And just most of my family's around here. And so, like you said, I connected with you guys because it's just kind of the way of the world is social media. I saw some of the stuff that you guys were putting out there and I'm a marketing major. And at the end of the day, I help people with insurance products and I need to put myself out there with a message that resonates with people. And that's marketing. And I really love the message that you guys had. And I did a little bit of research on how you built your business. And so I want to learn a little bit about you guys. And I just like the message that you're putting out there. So that's kind of what led us to here today. And I was just excited about it. I really enjoy people that take pride in their work. And that's really clear with you guys. And they want to be a valuable resource for clients. Anybody can go build a business and make some money. But really doing a good job and being a valuable resource for people is where I think I really want to place myself. And that was really clear, especially after our conversation with you guys. You do inspections, but the broader scale of what you guys do was really clear after our conversation.
Right.
So it was cool getting to know you.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I always appreciate you, a guest coming on and pumping our tires a little bit. But
I would.
But that's why we invited you.
right.
Yeah. Kudos to you guys because, I deal with the primary way I scale my business is I like to work. I work primarily in the home insurance realm. I can do auto insurance. I can do life insurance and all that stuff. And as I've done this over the past handful of years, it's really connected me with a lot of other industries too. So the supporting industries like inspection companies. And I've seen a lot of different companies and talked to a lot of different representatives, but it was just, yeah, it was really clear that you're a very respected company within the marketplace. And so I just said, hey, it'd probably be good for me to connect with you guys.
Boy, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
No, I was really eager to bring you on. Honestly, the more I thought about it initially when you reached out, I was kind of going, an insurance guy, I don't know how to spin this conversation,
Yeah.
but
Focused on
Yeah.
tradespeople mostly.
Yeah.
Up to this.
right. But the more I thought about it, and so much of the real estate industry, especially when it comes to the inspection and then people afterwards, it's kind of the passing of the baton,
Yeah.
so to speak. And so, the real estate agent does their due diligence into finding a home that fits and checks all the boxes for their client. And then it's time for the inspector to come in and the appraiser to come in and to sort of assess how things actually are, on a deeper level. And then the baton after that can get passed to, insurance, onto other contractors for further work. And so I was just really interested to have that conversation with you about when things come up during a home inspection and Montana specific things. How does insurance, tend to treat certain things? We'll talk kind of about electrical issues, plumbing issues, roofing, things that come up there. But I was pretty eager to talk to you about that.
I preface that a little with a question. How often does an insurance agent want to see the report?
It's a really good question. I guess it's going to be, I can only really speak for myself. There's going to be some key things that's going to cause someone like me, because I'm a layer within the system. I'm not an underwriter, so I don't set the guidelines. I have to abide by the guidelines. I don't set rates. I'm there to place the risk with the company that fits that appetite. That's why rates are drastically different for everybody, because they're going to be rating for location, who lives there, how well it's been kept, the claims history of the individuals living there, claims history of previous homes they lived in. I mean, there's a multitude, hundreds of different factors that play into all that stuff. But what's going to cause an insurance agent to ask for an inspection report is typically going to be the age of the home, and especially if it's being purchased at that time, there's going to be tons of pictures. So if it's pretty clear visually that there's some deferred maintenance from the exterior side of the home, then we'll typically ask about that. If they're pretty unsure of how old the electrical, plumbing, and heating is, how old the roof is, those are probably, I'd say, the four biggest things that we need to be concerned about for our carrier partners that we are appointed by. Roofs are the biggest one because that leads to the most amount of claims payouts for carriers. And any region is subject to wind and hail. So roofs are the biggest one. And the majority of insurance carriers don't do interior inspections. They are going to contract with third-party companies to do an exterior inspection, and some companies don't always do exterior inspections. So it's changed a lot over the past couple of years, and there's no specific science to it. I would say ideally, every agent should probably ask, if we really wanted to, ask for an inspection report for every home purchase, especially if it involves financing, because a certain policy has to have certain settlement options included within it to uphold the loan requirements. It has to be a replacement cost policy. And so to obtain a replacement cost policy, the home has to be in good working condition. So generally speaking, electrical, plumbing, and heating has to be updated within the past 30 years, and the roof, so for some carriers, has to be within 15 years old to earn a replacement cost policy. Depends on the type of roof. So it's going to be, it's going to range in a lot of different ways, but I would just say the age of the home and how it might be viewed from an interior inspection wise. But interior wise, if it's listed on Zillow or Realtor, there's usually going to be a lot more pictures. Or if we just have limited pictures, if it's bought off market, then we need to see an inspection. We need to know what's going on there. So
I'm curious. So you mentioned a lot of those systems. What you're primarily going off of is just known age or last date of replacement. We run into quite a bit of new installations of roofs and electricals and heating systems that are that are no better than they would be if they were 50 years old. So I would imagine there would be a little bit of a desire for an inspection report for you to be able to identify those kind of risks. You know, even if the roof is new, it may still be.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
Leaking.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
So maybe we could dive a little bit into some of those specifically. Roofing in particular, I'm pretty interested in. So 15 years is kind of the main cutoff point as far as a lot of what you're seeing.
Yep.
We don't run into, maybe it's just part of our state, we don't run into hail damage all that often, but enough during a given year to where maybe I'll call out hail damage on 3 or 4 different houses a year.
Yeah, we had a significant hailstorm for us 2 or 3 years ago. I mean, on the more eastern portions of the state, they've got quite a bit more, but we don't. But we saw quite a bit of it 2 or 3 years ago after that storm that was even breaking windows.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you get some nasty stuff. I mean, weather patterns have changed. There's no doubt about that. It's caused a larger volume of claims payouts, and that's the biggest thing. I think and it's understandably so, you know, windstorm, hailstorm comes through, and most people are going to go check out the roof. And then I do think that in some aspects, people look at that. It's like, if I can get my roof replaced via an insurance claim because there's justified damage and it meets the policy contracts, why wouldn't I take that? If I can avoid having to pay out of pocket, you know, just for an old roof, then that's where you're typically going to see those things. Most people do know that if you're a homeowner. So, but it's interesting. So, I mean, you guys are primarily in this marketplace, whereas the home insurance portfolio of carriers I resource to, if I'm helping a client in like Eastern Montana, drastically different rates, drastically different appetites. Some carriers just absolutely don't write in Eastern Montana. Some do. And it's interesting because Montana is a uniquely geographically different place in certain aspects. And so how you assess those things in those marketplaces are going to be a little bit different from one place to another. So, but generally speaking, the 15 years is going to be a asphalt shingle. If it's a metal roof, there's more leniency there and an extended lifetime between 20 and 30 years. So it varies between carriers, and it's also changed quite a bit over the last couple of years. So I have some carriers where the 15-year limit was implemented the year and a half ago, and prior to that, it was about a 20 to 25-year limit. So yeah, there's been a lot of change recently.
I know as we as inspectors, we try to stay away from giving specific ages for things for, I mean, obvious, you know, kind of liability reasons, but, you know, so we dig more into the current condition of things. And then, you know, if the seller happens to know when the last time it was replaced, that's great. But otherwise
sometimes we have that from the permit records, but we always avoid saying you have this much left on the roof. You know?
Yeah, no, understandably so, to avoid any liability, but which we run into. I think Montana's a low regulation state. And so one of the biggest challenges we run into with our carrier partners is if we don't have a valid date or year of when it was replaced, it's really hard for us to provide the necessary policies if there's financing involved, if that documentation isn't available. So if there wasn't a permit pulled or somebody did a, you know.
In most of the state, there's no requirement for a permit. So.
So, which creates challenges from within our industry. And I think it's those worlds coming together to make sure we understand how local municipalities, you know, require certain things so that we're holding those things accountable. Because as you said in the start of this conversation, there's checks and balances to every home that's being purchased, and inevitably the person's going to be living in their home, and you want people to feel good about home ownership. And as long as you have the right representatives in place, they can go and live in their home and enjoy it. But as long as you're upholding the things that we're supposed to, then a
Right.
little bit about it.
Right.
Yeah.
How about older electrical systems? Is there a similar kind of, date of update
Mhm.
you're looking for any given policy?
Yep. So carriers are going to differ. Some are going to be more specific in want documentation. Big thing for us is if I see a home that was built 1940 or earlier, which we get in a lot of marketplaces in Western Montana, Butte, Helena here, that triggers my need to make sure I'm asking about knob and tube wiring, if that's existent within the home in any capacity. It's a no-go, completely decline for most carriers. So it can be pretty alarming for a lot of people going into selling your home. If you've been a homeowner for a while and some of these guidelines weren't established 20, 30 years ago when you bought the house and you never updated the electrical, it can be a bit of a rude awakening when you go to sell your home and the price tag that comes along with updating that stuff. But generally speaking, it's about a 30-year time frame that they want to see the electrical, plumbing, and heating. If it's an older home, it's going to flag in their system. They're going to want some documentation as to what type of condition it's in. So
Is knob and tube the big identifier, or do they also get into different types of, we identify obsolete types of panels that have, are no longer in use,
yep.
different things like that? Do you, different policies get into those details as
Yep.
well?
Yep.
They do.
Yeah. And it changes a lot. Knob and tube's going to be the biggest one. And it's changed quite a bit, but I think a really considerate person, an agent, can get easily into the weeds and really try and take care of their clients. But at the end of the day, we are required to abide by the questions within the application and the app and the guidelines that exist at that point in time. And as long as they meet those requirements, an inspection exists for the person to take into consideration the general concerns that they want to consider before they buy the home. And as long as they're meeting the guidelines within their contract, they're within their contract. If something were to happen, and they'll certainly earn a payout as long as everything's being abided by. But knob and tube is going to be the biggest thing that flags in most applications.
Right. Right.
No.
Okay. Other systems, plumbing, I know for us, there's like electrical, there's just certain older systems that we kind of identify. We had talked in our last conversation about polybutylene.
Mm-hmm.
Very popular, especially in manufactured homes in the 1990s, for the most part, late 80s to 90s.
Mm-hmm.
I would assume that's another kind of red flag for a lot of policies as well.
Yep.
Now,
Yep.
is that an absolute no-go, just like knob and tube, or is there any leeway there with poly?
It's a pretty limited marketplace for the thing that we run into in Montana is we're a big geographical area with not so many people. So there's not a ton of carriers, quote unquote, playing ball. And so it's just not a marketplace that any insurance company is going to go win the day on. And so there's pretty limited appetite when it comes to homes that have certain types of systems in them. And so, it's going to be a pretty straight no-go when it comes to those types of conditions within a home.
So as an inspector, I have a client, I'm doing an inspection, and then I have the walkthrough at the end, and they've got kind of as a recap here, they've got a roof that's older than 15 years old, or I can confirm that it's older than 15 years old, regardless of condition. I'm going into that with explaining to them that insurance is probably going to want them to have that replaced going in.
Yeah, you'd be pretty safe to say that, well, for your guys' own good, I would probably stray away from saying they're not going to be able to, because things have changed so much and they're going to continue changing, and insurance carriers are always going to want to earn more business. And as things have opened up over the past couple of years of insurance carriers, loss ratios have turned in a more positive direction. It allows them to be a little bit more loose with their guidelines. But as of right now, yeah, I would say generally speaking, if it's an architectural shingle roof, composite shingle, asphalt shingle roof, and it's pretty clear it's older than 15 years old, I would be safe to say that it's just going to be pretty challenging to secure a home insurance policy that's going to meet loan requirements,
Understood.
or there's going to be a heightened premium.
Yeah. We do advise them, within this time span, you're probably going to want to have in your budget for a new roof or something like that. But we don't usually get into the insurance on a roof unless it's a wood shake roof in the forest.
Yeah. No, that's going to be pretty glaring right away. So, but yeah, I mean, and I think I think the market's become more educated within the past couple of years too. Most realtors have, learned up front what things to be aware of.
Right.
And so those will be conversations that are usually had at the time, but before a home's listed, but it's an ever evolving industry. And so, yeah, trying to stay updated with people.
Right. Okay. That's always valuable information for us to be able to pass that on to our clients because I more or less have always informed clients when I find polybutylene or knob and tube, something along the lines of, insurance may, have a concern about it.
Yeah.
Knowing where kind of the lines are drawn with certain systems that's pretty helpful.
Yeah. What percent, I mean, if you don't mind me asking, what percentage of the time do you have an inspection report finished up, provided, and how in depth do most buyers want to go into that? What type of consultation really comes from that type of stuff? Because like I said, we are required to go off of the questions within the application and abide by the guidelines. And outside of that, it's kind of up to the buyer to make sure that they are comfortable with whatever conditions that might exist within the home, but, and other, advice they're provided along the way. So how does that typically look for the people you work with?
Yeah. Well, we always invite our clients to join us for a walkthrough. It's usually recommended near the end of the inspection, so we can just kind of, get in the zone, do our thing, get all the questions answered, and then have them meet us at the end. But
and we call them the day before to see if there are any hot buttons for them that we could pay particular attention to.
Okay. But I would say a good majority, I would say the vast majority of clients are looking to have an in-person walkthrough at the end, whether that was something they knew they wanted to do ahead of time or that we kind of brought to their attention as an option.
Yeah.
So 90% or so we're doing and it's going to vary inspector to inspector, but I'm usually spending a good 30 to 45 minutes with people, walking through the findings of the report immediately afterwards, and then we get the report to them same day as the inspection. So they're pretty well hit with a lot of information, but we've always found that walkthrough to be just invaluable. Yeah, just incredibly valuable.
And that's the typical residential client. Of course, it varies if they're investor clients or commercial clients or any kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But the typical residential client, we're just doing a 30, 40-minute walkthrough at the end. But yeah, we do get pretty involved in the details.
I can imagine so, yeah.
Not necessarily on the walkthrough, but in the report. And then, of course, we follow up with them. The advantage to the walkthrough, of course, is once they see the report, we can kind of ease our way into the report that way, because once they see the report shortly after that, there could be some things in there that appear more alarming than they really need to be.
Yeah.
And so we want to, we don't want to push anybody over the edge.
For sure. Yeah, it's a balancing act between buying a house. It's stressful. There's no doubt about it. The lending side of things.
Everything has a solution.
Yeah.
I want to present it that way.
Exactly. And I think I really appreciate that. I think the insurance realm, with how much it's evolved over the past couple of years, has hardened my industry in some senses. So I I mean, we're risk managers, and so we easily look at a lot of different things and think, oh gosh, what could go wrong? That's what we're always thinking about. And so at the same time, it's purchasing a home should be an exciting thing and a rewarding thing. And so it's just balancing between, being considerate and honest, and also finding ways to make it enjoyable and easy. So, yeah.
How do the actuarials in Western Montana compare to adjacent areas that are served by the same companies?
Are you talking actuarials or underwriters? Or
No, the actuarial, because I know, well, I don't know, but I believe that you guys take those numbers from a region
Mhm.
and then kind of average out the pricing
Yeah.
in some form or fashion. And so a lot of times I think it seems we're paying for others' mishaps.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that is true to some degree, but we hear all the time of insurance carriers dropping certain areas, and it seems like they lost a bunch of money in Southern California, and this is a smaller market, so we'll just pull out of here and save money and then feed something else, and it kind of sucks for people here, but
No, it's a great question. And I think with the way that the insurance industry evolved, it's really forced a conversation for everybody to really understand why it is the way that it is. And it's evolved pretty rapidly over the past handful of years. And so to generalize it in some senses, when you are insured with a carrier, you are a part of a risk pool. Not to say that, wildfires in Southern California are going to quickly and rapidly impact a Western Montana marketplace. But if, say, there's a large enough carrier within that marketplace and it's detrimental enough to their business to withdraw from that marketplace, well, they're still an insurance company and they need to go win business or find sustainability elsewhere. So then that's going to put stresses on that marketplace, which is going to force them into other marketplaces. And it also might open up other opportunities within those marketplaces that have high stresses. That's going to maybe open them up to more niche insurance carriers. So generally speaking, when, the consumer says, am I paying for the hurricanes happening in the Gulf Coast, or the wildfires happening in California, or the wildfires happening in Montana? In some senses, yes, because when you are agreeing to work with an insurance carrier, you're a part of that risk pool, and the decisions that are being made to write business within certain marketplaces is going to impact everybody's rates. And the things happening as far as losses go throughout the country are going to have some type of waterfall effect on how the carrier is going to move forward in writing business throughout the country. It needs to be sustainable, it needs to be profitable, and it needs to make sense. And there's a lot of other underlying economical impacts that play into insurance. Insurance is not a very attractive thing, but it's a necessary thing. And with the way that the economy has evolved and climate has impacted us in certain regions, and I think the way that people live in really high saturated places is going to be a big factor moving forward. So for instance, here in Western Montana, we have, if you say, which is happening more regularly now, I might get a call from somebody that's trying to buy a house not too far from here in Lolo in a more forested area, say, 15 miles down the road. And they have a neighbor, a quarter mile down the road that has had this policy forever through the same company they're trying to acquire the same policy through. It's going to be really hard nowadays to secure a policy through some companies because they're just oversaturated in some areas. A lot of carriers can't oversaturate themselves within one marketplace, because if there is a big catastrophic loss, it's going to hit their reserves.
Spread the risk.
Yeah, you have to spread the risk, and that's what has happened in a large part of the country. And it's also, Montana's a bit unique in comparison to, let's say, like California. California is highly regulated, and the insurance department, from everything I've educated on myself on, is very pro-consumer, which can be a good thing, but it also needs to be balanced between being pro-business enough to keep it open for carriers to be able to provide solutions. So that's why you've seen in a lot of those marketplaces, most major carriers like State Farm, Allstate, USAA, and every other major carrier that people are aware of are not writing new home insurance policies within those marketplaces. And so I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned in those marketplaces that, as people are migrating and moving to places like Western Montana, we have to be pretty mindful of and make sure that we understand how that happened in those places. Because I've talked to underwriters that used to work in Southern California that say 10 years ago, there was no chance that these types of losses would have happened in some of these communities that completely wiped out entire neighborhoods. And so it's just been a really interesting time. And that's why we've seen such large increases in insurance premiums and why it has become more complex to secure home insurance.
Actually, a deal will blow apart because insurance, and usually we're the deal killers, but
Yeah, you guys, we're in the same boat there. Yeah.
we always say we don't kill the deal, but sometimes the property does.
Yeah, exactly.
No, the insurance oftentimes is, we have a standard comment. We go by the what is it? The Department of Natural Resources guidelines for trimming trees away and bushes and having your different boundary lines and such. And we always make those recommendations, but we've been doing that for years and years and years. And only in the last few years have we seen insurance companies come in and say, yeah, we're just not going to insure that. Or we could insure it for this much, which at that point you might as well just stick it in the bank and insure yourself.
Yeah, no, but it's a very real, it's a big reality that I think, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know exactly where it'll go because insurance is a reflection of a lot of different factors within an economy. And it's a necessary thing. I think it's one of the clear signals as to the health of everything else involved with it. Because if a home needs to be fixed, you're calling a contractor. You need to borrow money to buy a home, you're calling a mortgage lender. And you need an insurance person, you call me to insure it, but we are providing solutions. And if insurance carriers aren't willing to take on those risks, it's going to change the dynamic in which how we build communities. And so that's, for instance, why you see, I don't sell insurance. I've never sold insurance in Florida. I never sold insurance in California, but we certainly are seeing a pretty large influx of folks from out of state moving in to not just Montana, other parts of the country too, that might have experienced a loss and say, I don't want to rebuild, or in a marketplace where it costs an arm and a leg to insure the place. And hopefully I can insure it because the insurance aspect of your property is really what's upholding a lot of your value too, because if you can't insure a property, you can't lend on it. And if you can't attract a buyer for financing, then you have to go attract a cash purchaser. And there's only so many ultra rich people in the world that want to cash purchase a property and self-insure.
Yeah.
And so, we are, I think, seeing a lot of dynamics change within the Montana marketplace because fire mitigation, we do a really good job. And I think we have a lot of really good resources. But we also see big wildfires, and it's clear that we just don't have that saturation. So for instance, in Helena, there was last summer a 15,000 acre fire that popped up and not a single structure was lost. And it was butting up against a pretty large development of really nice new homes. And so really cool because it's clear that we have really good systems in place to fight these fires. But if we want to continue building big, nice, beautiful homes in some of these more remote parts of Montana, is the rest of the risk pool willing to pay for the risk? Mm-hmm. And the answer at this point in time is there's a lot of stresses being put on the system that kind of says no. Because if you live in a less risk averse place like here, you want to pay as low premium as you can. But if your insurance company is insuring a home in a place that is a lot more risky, how might you feel about that? Especially if a loss does happen.
Now that brings up another question. I'm sorry, I'm walking all over your script here. we do a lot of building codes stuff as well. Most inspection companies don't do that, but we've, I guess, uniquely qualified in that. So we're aware of different ways you can construct your properties to be fire resistant, to be and such. If somebody wants to build in the sticks and use fire resistant construction methods, is there a leniency or another category for insuring that property?
Great question. You would think so. As of right now, no. The biggest thing that's going to be the main question when it comes to a home that is categorized within a fire line score 7 or higher is how those fire line scores are already set prior to me quoting the policy. But if a home falls within a certain fire line score, the carrier's appetite either allows for it or they don't. They don't care how well mitigated it is or what it's built with. If it's in an area that is within a certain fire line score, it can be pretty challenging. And it's changed quite a bit even within the past 12 months. I just quoted a house. Where was that? It was in, can't remember what zip code, but it fell within a fire line 10 score. And I could only find one carrier to secure a policy for that. And I wasn't too surprised by that. A year ago, I might have had 3 or 4.
So none of these carriers have a means of challenging?
No. They don't right now. At least within the carriers that, here's what I would say too. I have an available portfolio of carriers that I resource to, but that doesn't encompass the entire marketplace. There's a lot of change happening that I think is forcing the industry to disperse risk amongst smaller carriers to some extent, but it's a lot more challenging for smaller carriers to take on big risk over time too. So as this is happening, it's just caused a lot more stresses, and I think it will continue to change. So from the carriers that I work with, which are the majority of admitted carriers, like most people are used to working with, and some less known brands or companies, it'll probably force that. And like what's happened in California is there's the FAIR plan, which is a state-run plan, and a lot of homeowners are forced onto those plans now because no major insurance carrier is willing to take on risk within those marketplaces.
Yeah. I'm just curious as to how that'll evolve, since there are so many materials and products and methods now to mitigate risk.
I think it'll evolve over time. I think what's happened is there's kind of been this whiplash effect since COVID, economically speaking. Cost to build a home, cost of homes has exponentially gone up over the past couple of years. So the reason that premiums have kind of done what they've done is COVID happened. Everybody was living in their homes. You're more aware of things going on in your home. You were able to catch things a lot sooner. People were, from an auto insurance standpoint, a lot less people were driving on the road. So there was a lot less claims being paid out on. And then life kind of got back to normal. And from an economic standpoint, it just, there were things that led to material costs going up. And here in Montana, it certainly costs quite a bit more, to my understanding, to just build homes or fix homes.
Although mitigating construction means we'll drive the cost of that home up.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
But nevertheless,
it's a really good question. I think it's changing the way Montana kind of looks. Montana's always been this mountain, rugged place to live, and people do want to, and I love living in Montana, but I think there's this idea, live in Montana, live in the woods, live in the forest, but from an insurance standpoint, it can pose a lot of challenges. And I think it will settle itself out a little bit over time, but I think are going to learn a lot from other marketplaces that will better place us over time in comparison to other places.
For some of those other insurance considerations when it comes to rural properties specifically, like with septic systems or well systems, so we'll do inspections to kind of see how things stand. But what does insurance think about those systems versus a house on city water, city sewer?
Yeah. It's not going to differ too much. It might just differ in things that we might recommend. So the way you can kind of look at an insurance policy is there's the main contract, and then there's a lot of additional endorsements that you can add on to the policy to broaden coverage. And certain endorsements might be applicable to certain marketplaces. So for instance, like service line coverage is a relatively newer type of endorsement, and that's going to be usually a little bit more applicable to in-town homes because it's going to cover underground service systems that are going to incur a sudden and accidental type of loss. So if there's excavation costs tied to fixing a sewer line coming onto your property, that might apply. Whereas if you're living sustainably on your own and you're not tied into any city sewer lines, then that might not apply. But if you have any type of underground, service lines coming onto your property, that's going to be applicable. So if you're living remotely, and the things that we consider, it's not going to change too drastically. It's more or less of, at least right now, location and the resources in close proximity to those homes and how quickly, we can mitigate a potential loss. But age is going to be the biggest thing. And who's living in the home too is also going to be a qualifier too. So.
Okay. Differences, I guess, between types of construction as well. Traditional stick-built single-family houses versus manufactured homes,
Log homes.
Yep.
What are the insurance considerations for those kind of special types of construction, so to speak?
Yep. No, great question. Every carrier kind of has their appetite and things that they specialize in. And so that'll play a big factor into it. So some carriers will just focus on certain types of homes that other carriers just don't have an appetite for. And that's how we'll say it. And so our marketplace, has a larger volume of log homes. I think we're seeing an increase in manufactured homes. So the way that those things are underwritten are going to be just dependent upon the carrier. When it comes to manufactured homes, there's historically, I guess, over the past few decades, there's only a few carriers that really underwrite a lot of those types of homes. And if there's any financing involved, that's going to limit you even more because you have to have a replacement cost policy to, be approved for that financing. And so the number of carriers that underwrite manufactured homes are limited, and it has to have certain requirements to, be given a replacement cost policy. So similar to log homes too, very limited appetite for that type of stuff. Not to say there's not carriers, but every home has its uniqueness. And so, there's like Montana, we're our own state and we have limitations to things because that's what makes us a bit unique. But we're finding solutions still, and we're in a lot better place than other marketplaces. So I never try and explain a lot of this in ways to try and necessarily scare anybody, or just provide awareness and let people know, hey, we're going to educate you so that if you are going to be buying a property, you're going to feel good about it, and you at least are given the information you need to, make a decision that you feel, if I were to stay in this home 30 years from now, I feel pretty confident with that. So, but as far as underwriting goes, it's not going to change too much. It's just whether or not it's within the carrier appetite at that point in time.
I know with manufactured homes, we often we'll do the inspection, and then an engineer's inspection for how the home is founded, looking specifically for, if it's not on a true permanent foundation, then looking for tie-down systems and things like that. And so oftentimes we'll actually get called back by an engineering company to perform the field inspection.
Yeah.
So, but is that one of the, I guess,
considerations,
the bigger considerations when it comes to manufactured homes, how it's founded?
How it's founded, and when they've added additions to it.
Yep.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, because that really anything structurally attached to a manufactured home where it's not designed for such an attachment can cause problems on the insurance end, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Really, when it comes down to it, if there's enough concerns, there's just more of a manual underwriting process and an actual conversation with an underwriter.
Now, sorry to cut you off.
No, yeah.
Is there ever a time where an insurance company says, go get an engineer to solve this problem and then we'll talk?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. When it comes down to it, if somebody wants a home bad enough and they need insurance, we're here to say, we want to provide you insurance. Here's what would need to get done to provide insurance. And so I had a home not too long ago, from an exterior standpoint, had some cracking on the foundation, and had an engineer report that we provided to the underwriting team, and it was just deemed that it was cosmetic and there was no actual structural issues with the home. And so as long as we have those things in place, then certainly we're going to go to bat for every client we go to and make sure that we're applying the risk and talking to the underwriters. And if we can get the approval and we can secure the insurance, great. So, yeah.
I think that's different than the reputation of insurance companies.
Oh, yeah. Oh, very much so. Yeah.
If not, so go to bat.
Not even
for the client as much as not pay anything out.
Yeah. No, I've seen that, I get it. I absolutely get it. I don't think anybody ever wakes up one day and thinks, oh, I want to be an insurance agent, like a lot of things.
But I don't know about insurance agents, but insurance companies might be second in line behind lawyers.
Very much so. Very much so.
Yeah. And sorry, because I have friends that are lawyers, but it's just it
creates a need.
Yeah. Would imagine the vast majority of renovations happen without consideration of letting the insurance company know.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Yeah. You want to let your insurance company know as much as you can, just to make sure you're in good grace. So if something does happen, there's no challenges or denial of claims. But as long as they're aware of it, you'd be surprised, honestly. I think the more that I've grown within the industry, there's checks and balances to how things are getting processed and underwritten. And we build relationships with our underwriters. And so there's this trust aspect to who we're working with and the resources available within certain communities. As long as we're building those relationships properly, there's a lot more of a conversation that I think people understand happens when policies are getting underwritten. And that's really what it takes. And that's where I feel a lot of confidence and, a heightened level of excitement within my industry, because I think AI is pushing, the limits of a lot of different industries. And you'd think, insurance is one of those industries that I think it will integrate into our industry and weed out some types of positions. But there's so many complexities that come along to homeownership and building and stuff like that. And it's going to require a continuous amount of human interaction to make sure that we're treating humans properly. So, yeah.
When I got home insurance for this house 17 years ago, they gave me a quote and a replacement cost. And I said, nah, you're not going to, if the worst happens in this area, which would be a fire, you're not burning the land. You're not burning the foundation. I can build on top of that. I've been construction for 30 years. I know how to, Anyway, so I basically cut my insurance bill in half at that time, because it's like, I know what I can build it for. This much a square foot and, blah, blah, blah. But that has changed. That conversation is no longer one that you can have with a carrier, in my experience, anymore. So,
no, it's generally speaking, I would say 90% of the homes that I'm quoting, oftentimes the replacement cost amount that we're estimating for the rebuild is going to be lower than what the actual purchase price is of the home. And so a lot of the questions we get asked is, how come we're insuring this for $100,000 less than what I'm purchasing it for? I was like, well, Great question. And I actually usually provide that insight prior to that. I like to get ahead of those questions initially. So I'll send an email breakdown of the quote and all the considerations and just insight that I think is worthwhile for them knowing ahead of time. But if that conversation comes up ahead of time, then, we don't consider the value of the land. We can't insure the land. So it burns down the ground. You still have value in that. And the replacement cost of a home has changed quite a bit over the past couple of years, but there's still usually going to be a difference in that. Typically where that's going to be completely reversed is if, we're in University District where you're looking at a whole old historical home, or in Helena in the history, or the Mansion District or Butte, and you have these old Victorian homes that would probably cost $1 million if you wanted to fully rebuild the way that it was, and you bought it for $400,000. So just a different thing. But generally, there's probably, I would say, an 80% of the market value of a home is going to be what we come up with for the replacement cost amount. But we have certain aspects of the policy that are built to make sure that over time there's an inflationary cushion to make sure that we could fully rebuild it if that was the case. So.
Are there insurance considerations for historical homes?
Yes. Yeah. Some carriers won't do it. Some will.
Is that because the material specifications?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Just know going into that, the process to rebuild is going to put a lot of stresses on the limits within that contract and what they're willing to obligate themselves to. Some will, but that certainly has changed and will continue changing. But yeah, that's a great question. Yep.
I might just hit you with some of these specific questions that I know will give maybe realtors some good insight on what you do. During the inspection phase, what can a buyer do to make sure that they're not blindsided by insurance issues?
Mm-hmm. From a seller standpoint or from the buyer standpoint, or both?
Buyers, well, both. I would be curious.
Yeah. I think you can kind of look at a real estate transaction this way. I think you can prepare yourself as best you can. And if you're buying a used home or a home that's not new, you're going to expect some things that have general wear and tear in them. But generally speaking, if you want to set yourself up for success, you want to make sure the roof's in good condition. You want to make sure that the electrical, plumbing, and heating is in good working condition.
Major systems.
And that from an exterior standpoint, there's no glaring, issues. Is there peeling paint, or there any missing siding? Things like that is what's going to cause an interior inspection to get flagged, and potentially more information is going to be requested, or potentially a non-renewal if those conditions aren't fixed within a certain time frame.
Okay. Do you recommend that buyers talk to an insurance agent before they make an offer on a property?
Yeah, I mean, sir, yeah, absolutely. I think
Those ones in the woods would have moved them to not pay us before they found out they couldn't get the house anymore.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's why I think I really intentionally try and, work with or provide myself as an available resource for realtors in particular, because they're at the forefront of the home buying process. They're kind of the exciting part of it. Right. They're working with the buyers and they're working with the sellers. And so if we can provide them some of the more important information up front, it's going to better equip sellers. It's going to better equip buyers. So remind me your question again. I know I get a little off topic sometimes.
Oh, no, just if you would recommend that before they make an offer on the property, giving you a call.
Yeah. No, I would say ideally, but to get back on track to that, I think if you're a realtor, find somebody like and trust within my industry, so that you can, equip yourself with some of that general knowledge and be updated, and so that you can kind of be ahead of it. And if you have questions too, just utilize that person as a resource, so you can get ahead of those things. But you'll probably know ahead of time. I mean, if you got a seller that has a home in a certain location in Montana and you've been dealing with these things, you'll probably let them know ahead of time, here's some things that we'll have to consider and understand going into this. But if you have a home in a majority of Montana, 90% of Montana, you're gonna be able to find an insurance solution that's not gonna cause issues.
Still pays to have an accessible agent.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
From your experience, what are some of the most common misconceptions that home buyers and real estate professionals have about the home insurance process?
We're industry.
As of recent, that you can just get insurance. Yeah, it's going to be easy, because within the past 5 to 6 years, it was pretty darn easy to just get insurance, and that is not the case. And so that's a very just like straightforward thing to say. And it's kind of, I guess, weird for me to say, but, because there weren't a lot of homes that you had a ton of troubles with finding insurance for within our marketplace that long ago. But I guess I'm in the industry because I believe in the human aspect to it. And I believe in, what we can offer as agents long term. I think that owning a home is part of the American dream, and people want to, all generations are still resourcing to individuals like me because, hey, insurance isn't all that much fun to educate yourself on. And so I'm here as a resource with the knowledge people need to make sure that what they are placing meets the risk profile, so that after closing they're not running into issues that's going to cause a lot of heartache. And so I think people realize pretty quickly that let us deal with the stressful side of my industry, because there are a lot of stresses within our industry. We're managing risk for people, and we're dealing with people's lives and all of their important things. So we're taking into consideration a lot of important stuff. And so would you rather deal with somebody locally that's living a similar life to you, or would you rather have to call a 1-800 number to help you out in one of your more trying times? So yeah, there's a really human aspect that I think still exists within my industry that I think will always be there. I think that's a misconception that, even if you're buying insurance online, there's still a lot of human aspect to it that I think will provide us confidence long term. So,
well, Tom, I think that was a pretty darn good closing monologue for you there. Any last minute questions?
Yeah. Well, before we do close it up, just tell us about yourself. What you I know you opened telling us about yourself. Well, what kind of things do you specialize in? Do you do residential primarily? Do you commercial as well? Do you cater to the investors? What all would you like to get out there?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I appreciate it. I'm a primarily personal lines insurance agent. That will evolve over time. I have a real appreciation for trying to not be a jack of all trades, but more a specialist within a field. Where I don't do any type of health insurance. I'm licensed in that, but I don't do anything in that. I have some experience in it. Commercial is a totally different thing in comparison to personalized insurance. So I am primarily focused on personalized insurance. I really try and build my book of business off of homeowners. That's where my carrier portfolio's strengths are, so it's easier for me to place business. I can do renters, condos, investment properties. I guess anything home related is where I really focus, but I'm licensed for auto insurance, life insurance. I do commercial insurance, but more in a limited capacity. And I think over time, as I grow my business and hire on producers to help me scale my business in the right way, then I will dive a little bit more into the commercial side of things. But 90% of the time I'm doing residential, home, auto, and life for families.
You do residential multifamily as well?
Yep.
Commercial multifamily?
Up to 4 units. But yes, I do some commercial stuff. Yep.
Well, how can anybody get a hold of you?
So I have a website, rangeagencymt.com is my website. I'm available on a bunch of different social media forums, Facebook, Instagram. If you're on LinkedIn, I like to keep my professional profile there. I'm happy to.
That's all under Range Agency.
Range Agency, Tom Clinch. So yeah, if you type in Range Insurance Agency, Montana, you type in my name, Tom Clinch, you can find me. You can call me anytime, email me. I'm pretty available. You can easily find me online. So a lot of different ways you can get in contact with me. So
Very good.
definitely not hiding.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, appreciate it.